Good morning. My name is Peter Shaheen. I'm the editor-in-chief here at the Michigan Daily, and today we have the privilege of interviewing Dave Brandon, who's the athletic director at the University of Michigan. Mr. Brandon has come under intense criticism over the past few days over the handling of Shane Morris's concussion in Saturday's matchup against Minnesota and the subsequent communications with the student body and the general public. So today he's here to answer a few questions about that and his vision for the athletic department moving forward. Mr. Brandon became athletic director in 2010. He also served 8 years as a member of the university's Board of Regents, and he graduated from this university in 1974 with a degree in communications. He's also played football under Bo Schembechler, winning 3 Big Ten championships. Thank you again for being with us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right. We'll begin by talking about what happened this week. And can you please tell us a little bit about where you were at the game and what you were doing when that concussion with Shane Morris occurred?
I was up in the towers, and I actually move around quite a bit. I watched the game from different vantage points, because I'm always connecting with different people. So I was not on the sidelines. I was up in the tower, and then eventually I looped around to be in the locker room after the game.
When did you first make contact with Coach Brady Hoke about the incident and what had occurred?
Well, right after the game, whenever anyone's injured, there's immediate discussion, and the discussion really is centered around, are they okay? Are they okay? And the discussion that I heard was that Shane was doing fine, that he had an ankle injury, and that was the primary focus of discussion at that point.
Do you think you could tell us why Coach Hoke said he didn't meet with you until Monday or so, or how did you come to hear that information?
Well, sometimes I spend time with the coach on Sunday, but oftentimes I don't. They're very busy because they're usually going through game films and doing what they do, and I had a schedule of events on Sunday, and I actually spent some time getting further acquainted with what happened on the sidelines, because then I understood that there was some kind of a breakdown in communication. And that's when I started getting involved in trying to put together the pieces of what occurred.
Do you know how Coach Hoke became aware of the situation? Was it through a diagnosis of a neurologist or one of the team doctors?
I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of voices, both during a game and after a game. We have several physicians on the sidelines, several athletic trainers, and that's part of the problem we've identified, and I think we put that in our statement. There's a lot of voices, a lot of people interpreting information and communicating information, and one of the things that we've worked really hard to fix is to try to bring more protocol and more process around the whole communication side of this, so that we don't get into a situation where everybody isn't on the same page relative to what's really going on.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the other changes that you're planning on making to the university's concussion policy?
Yeah, certainly sideline communication is something that we really learned as a result of this experience. We need to think about differently, and we're actually going to bring and introduce technology to the sideline that we have not had before. And the plan is to actually wire several of our trainers and our doctors in such a way that there could be real-time communication. Because it's hard for people who haven't been down on the sidelines to understand sometimes, but our team can be between the 30-yard lines, which is a long, expansive space. There's all kinds of equipment and wires and cabinets and things going on. There's 110 football players there, and the way that sometimes our doctors and our trainers are spread around can create gaps in communication. And things happen very quickly down there. And what I've learned going through this process is that one of the great advantages we can provide them is to get them wired up in a way that they can talk to one another without necessarily standing next to one another, because sometimes that's difficult. So you're going to see that change.
Would you like to see Coach Hoke be wearing a headset to better his communication with the team?
No, his communication with the team is, I think, more prevalent than any coach I've ever observed, because instead of listening and communicating with all the voices that are up in the press box, talking about offense, talking about defense, talking about special teams, he chooses to have a young man stand behind him monitoring all of that and simply conveying to him information that's specific to questions or areas that he wants information on, and that frees him up to better communicate with the players. And that's just something that Coach Hoke has had as a practice in the way that he coaches and the way he likes to communicate with his players from the very beginning. The other change that we're making that I think is incredibly relevant, and in fact, I think you're going to start to see this more and more throughout college football, is something that the NFL instituted relatively recently that puts a medical professional up in the press box, because that's where you get the best view. And what we are actually going to launch this week at our Rutgers game is we're going to have a medical professional in a booth area, away from coaches, away from distractions, and they'll have a television set there, and that provides a couple of unique advantages. One, he'll be able to see the field and see things occurring that are hard to see at the field level on the sidelines. He'll be wired to the sidelines so that he can communicate with all those doctors and trainers in a real-time basis. He'll have a television set that's always on a 6-second delay. So what he'll be able to do is watch the play live from that vantage point, and then he can refer to the play again on television. And then, as is typically the case, television will oftentimes do a replay of the play, and he may often get a third time to look at that play. And that gives him, as a medical professional, the opportunity to see things from angles and from a vantage point, and with big lenses that can zero in and get a lot closer to the action. That will be helpful, and as we have looked at what happened this last Saturday, that would have been extremely helpful, because the hit that Shane took was very hard to see from the Michigan bench. We had lots of doctors, lots of trainers, lots of coaches, lots of people down there watching the action, but there were a lot of players between the bench and where that hit occurred. And had we had somebody who was really, and the other thing that happens is everybody follows the ball. The quarterback throws the ball and everybody's following to see where the ball's going and what's happening with the play. And that hit took place late. And so we believe we've taken some steps that are both innovative and directly addressing the situation that occurred Saturday, in hopes that something like that's not going to happen again.
In terms of how it was handled after the game, Coach Hoke had said that he would have allowed Shane Morris to play or practice with the team on Sunday, except for his ankle injury. It didn't seem that it was on his radar then a concussion could have occurred. What is being done to help make sure the coaches are aware of what can happen afterwards?
That was just another example of the failure of communication that took place among all of the doctors, all of the trainers, in this case the head coach, to try to piece together what happened and what the real situation was. Mm-hmm. And that was just a great lesson in how we needed to tighten things up and get better protocols and better systems of communication in place. And I feel comfortable that we've done that. It's a dynamic process. We'll never stop improving and trying to come up with new and better ways to protect the safety and welfare of our student athletes. That's the most important thing we do in Michigan athletics. And I might add, that's not just a football statement. You know, we have concussion risk in a great number of the sports that we play, and we need to have the same diligence and the same up-to-date thinking as how we can best detect and diagnose and treat concussions, because sadly it's a part of athletics today.
Your statements addressing the situation have come out at odd times, including Monday morning, well, it would have been Tuesday morning, a 1 a.m. statement from the athletic department, and we were also told that statement would have been from medical professionals, but it came from you. Can you explain why that statement came from you and why it was released at an odd hour?
Yeah, it was released at an odd hour because it took way more time than we would have ever thought possible. But here's what we were thinking, and I understand the criticism about how much time it took, because it took a long time. But what we found is, as we began to really vigorously try to unravel what happened and put the pieces together, that we kept getting more information during the day. And now part of that is we were trying to access directly very busy physicians who were busy doing their work on Monday. We were trying to access trainers and bring in and get their perspective. We actually wanted to spend some time with Shane and get his input, because he was right there and has a vivid understanding of some of the things that took place. And so we were taking the time that we needed throughout the day to try to put this together in the most accurate fashion possible. I've looked at some of these situations in the past where organizations have been so quick to try to get information out, the information that they've released is either incomplete or inaccurate. And our judgment was to err on the side of getting it right to the best of our ability, gathering all of the facts and reporting something that was absolutely our best knowledge, based on a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of inputs. And that's what we did. And at one point, I was hoping we could get that done by the middle of the day, then by the end of the day, and it ended up to be late in the evening. Then it got to the point where we really have said that we were going to get a statement out today. Today is just about over. Do we wait yet for another morning to come before we issue the statement, or do we put it out the minute that it's ready to be released to the public? And the judgment was made. It's taken longer than we thought, but let's get it out as soon as we can, and we released it.
Can you tell us why that statement came from you instead of some of the medical professionals that Hoke had talked about during his press conference?
Well, primarily my view is that I am the leader of Michigan Athletics, and I'm responsible for Michigan Athletics. And someone, the appropriate person in athletics, and I judge that to be me, needed to make it very clear that a mistake was made. We own it. We recognize it. We acknowledge that a mistake was made. We apologize for it, and I did. And we immediately committed that we would learn from it and make changes to ensure that it wouldn't happen again. And it was my judgment that the voice that should be making that statement should be me.
What communications have you had with University President Mark Schlissel about the situation?
Mark and I started communicating on this Sunday, and Mark asked the very same question that I did. The first question out of his mouth is, how's Shane? Because the health and welfare of this young man is paramount. And I was pleased to report to him that Shane was fine. But the president was as interested and as engaged in understanding what happened, why did the mistake occur, what do we do to make sure it doesn't occur again. He's been very engaged in the process and very helpful.
As athletic director, have you had any direct dialogue with the Board of Regents or members of the executive committee at the university about the situation? What feedback have you received from them?
We had an executive officer meeting this week, and as we always do, we talk about topics that are, relevant and things that are widely being discussed among the university community. And I spent a few minutes providing them with, the process that we followed. By then, the statement was issued, and the statement pretty well told the story. So there wasn't much education required, but we did talk about it briefly.
We know that a lot of alumni and donors have been upset by the situation. As a media organization, we've received letters from alumni expressing their discontent with how the athletic department handled the situation. What feedback have you been receiving from some of the alumni, and how many communications have been received this week?
Well, there's no shortage of feedback that I get on a variety of topics, and so we've heard from people with suggestions as to how they feel it could be managed better. We've heard from people who have ideas of technologies that are out there, some of which they are selling to try to help us with this. We've heard from people who have been concerned about the error. We've heard concerns we've heard from people who are sympathetic to the fact that decisions are made in a matter of seconds on a football sidelines, and there's lots of people involved in lots of decisions that take place. And that's not an excuse for what happened. We definitely made mistakes. But I think there's a clear understanding that this is a challenging situation to manage, and we'll learn from this and we'll get better. So there's a lot of people who are passionate about what we do and are very connected and feel a sense of ownership over Michigan athletics and specifically Michigan football, and we hear from them all the time.
Do you think this incident undermined trust in such a way that alumni are not going to be supporting both the athletic department and the University of Michigan as much in the future?
No, my experience with Michigan people is if you stand up and say, we made a mistake, we own it, we recognize that we made a mistake, we're not running away from it, we're apologizing for it, we feel as bad as anybody about the fact that it happened, and we're going to get busy at making the changes we need to make to get it fixed. Most Michigan people respect that and understand that sadly sometimes these things are going to happen. We try not to learn lessons the hard way, but sometimes that's how you learn, through mistakes, and how you react to those mistakes becomes most important. So I've also heard from a lot of people who appreciate the thoroughness of the statement that we provided, appreciate the work that we put into it to make sure that we got it right, and the fact that we own it.
Very well. In terms of what's been happening on campus this week, there's been a lot of outcry from students, especially on Tuesday. We saw a protest of students that came together and called for your termination. What would your message be for those students who are upset and frustrated by the situation?
Well, first of all, that's very hurtful. I mean, anybody who thinks that they want groups to gather with the topic being criticism and sometimes very personal attacks on the work and the job that you're attempting to do, it's hurtful. It's hurtful to me. It's hurtful to my family. I'm not tone deaf. I felt very badly, and my job and my personality is, to the best of my ability, I have to fix that. I have to own that as well. Clearly, there have been situations where we've disappointed people, and disappointments take a lot of different shapes for a lot of different reasons, but if we've got people who are disappointed and people who don't trust, the only thing we can do is work very hard to build back that trust. And that's what I'm committed to do. It's one of the reasons I'm here today. And it's one of the reasons I'll be happy to come back here on a regular basis. Because the work that we're doing down at Michigan Athletics is something that we're all very proud of. I had one of our previous athletic directors explain to me that being athletic director at Michigan is not a job, it's a way of life. And it is. It's a 7-day-a-week job. And frankly, there are things going on most of the 24 hours of the day. We have 931 student athletes. We have 31 teams. They're traveling, they're moving around. We're managing a lot of not only logistics, but a lot of young people's lives. And we work really, really hard to protect their safety and their welfare and provide them with a great experience as a student athlete at Michigan. And when you work that hard and you have a purpose behind why you're here and why you're in this role, when people criticize and say that they can't trust you and they personally attack you, it's something that's meaningful and it makes a difference. And I'm listening. And my job with our students is to try to build back that trust. I personally believe that if you look at my nearly 5 years in this job, that for a significant period of time, I would describe my relationship with the student body as being outstanding. I think people enjoyed night games. They enjoyed some of the changes that we made, some of the activities and spectacles that we brought to campus. There was a lot of very positive feedback, and I would go to games and events, and I would purposefully walk through the student sections and try to develop relationships, and felt really good about it. Where I feel we got off the rails, if I can use that phrase, was when we tried to address a problem that started to develop in the student section at our football games. And we, as a team at athletics, got very frustrated over the fact that we were selling 20,000 tickets to students, and they weren't showing up. They were either coming, many were coming really late, many weren't coming at all, and we had this big empty section. And it was a situation that we just really, really felt we needed to address. And we did a lot of good things because we, number one, recognized it as a problem. You gotta do that. In order to solve a problem, you have to recognize it. We went out and talked to a lot of people in our business, the people that operate other stadiums, to find out how are you handling your student section. And what we learned is virtually all of them were either using general admission or shifting to general admission as a way to try to incentivize students to arrive earlier because you get better seats. And so the good news is we were trying to address a problem. We did our research and we thought we'd come up with the right answer, but here's where we screwed it up. We thought we had the right answer, but we didn't talk to our students. We didn't get the buy-in. And so we swung and we missed. We launched a program that didn't work. Our students didn't like it. It didn't provide them some of the flexibilities they were looking for. And they voted with their feet as we went through that season. It was very obvious that it wasn't addressing the problem. We had just as many empty seats, or close to as many empty seats, as we had before. So you've got a problem, you launch a solution, and it doesn't work. We try to learn. We try to learn from our mistakes. We recognize that we were not as connected. And so the next step coming into this season was, let's work with the Student Government Association, let's work with the Maze Rage people, let's connect with our student leaders and get them to help us modify this program in such a way that will be more favorably received by the students. Because the key thing for everybody to understand is we want a large student section that's boisterous and loud and supporting our football team. That's what we want. And we should all want that. And there's all these trends nationally about how student sections are shrinking and students are not showing up. And I don't care about national trends, I just care about Michigan. And we've got the biggest stadium in the country, we've got the biggest living alumni in the country, and we should have the biggest student section of students who show up and care about our football team. So we adjusted our plan and we engaged with the leaders and we modified the program significantly in an attempt to get to a better place. So then we go out and we launch the program, and our student ticket sales go from 20,000 to 12,000, a reduction of 8,000 interested students to show up at the games. Well, I view that as strike two, because I don't define that as success. That's not where we're trying to go. And keeping in mind that I think one of the unfair criticisms about our efforts to change, people have oftentimes tried to tie it to money. It had nothing to do with money. The students were buying the tickets. They were paying for the tickets. We had collected the revenue. It wasn't about money. It was about the fact that they weren't coming, and how do we make changes. So we've had our two strikes, and now what we need to do is we need to figure out, okay, how do we get this right? Because I don't need or want a third strike when it comes to the student section at Michigan football games. As we go into next year, we have a very robust schedule, some very exciting opponents coming in. We've got our chief rivals coming in. It should be quite a year of football. And what I want is a large student section of students who will show up, be there at the start of the game to applaud for the team when they come out, cheer for the team when they come out of the tunnel, and be there to help our team create that home team advantage that you look for when you play it at home. And as far as I'm concerned, everything's on the table to figure out how do we work together with the students to try to get there, because that should be our goal. That should be all of our goal.
You had mentioned that some of those comments and feedback you received were hurtful to you and your family. During this week at any time, did you ever consider resigning?
No.
Did you ever consider firing Coach Hoke?
No.
Okay. What role should the athletic department take in engaging with non-student athletes, as in terms of activities or programming, and how are you planning on doing that outreach so you can rebuild confidence in the athletic department?
Well, I think the Michigan Daily can be helpful. One of the reasons I'm here today, and one of the reasons I offer to come back, we should set up a process where once a month or whatever makes sense for you all, I'm more than happy to make myself available to do a better job of communicating not only who I am and what I'm really about, because I think there are a lot of people out there who've decided they really don't like me, who've never met me, and probably many who've never been in the same room with me. I need to fix that. So one of the things I want to do is figure out ways for me to be able to connect more with the student body. And obviously there's so many organizations and ways to do that within a rather busy schedule. I need to fit more of that in. I need to engage more, and I want to do that. Because I really truly believe if there was better understanding, improved communication about why we're doing some of the things we're doing, there would be a higher level of understanding. And I also think that we would learn some things as to how to modify our plans to make them even better. So we're going to go to work and see how we can better connect and better engage. And this is, athletics is all about team. And to me, it's not the athletic department that it's a team. It's this community. And we have to do a better job, and I plan to lead that effort to engage with the community and try to answer some of these questions in a way that people feel more connected and have more buy-in to the things that we're doing.
Under your tenure, the athletic department has grown both in revenues and expenditures and also physical footprint on campus. What is your vision for the athletic department, say in 2020?
Well, we have a vision statement, and it's not mine. It's mine and the 350 people who come to work every day at Michigan Athletics. And our vision statement is relentlessly striving to make Michigan Athletics the leaders and best in every way. Now that's a very, very high standard. There are hundreds of university athletic programs out there who want to be the leaders and they want to be the best. It's a very, very competitive world that we are in. But we've defined ourselves as a program that wants to be the leaders and best in every way. And that includes academic performance, it includes coaching talent, it includes on the field performance, it includes the facilities we provide, the quality of the recruits that we bring, the fan experience that we provide. There's no shortage of metrics and measures in this world that we're in to benchmark and say, how are we really doing towards this aspirational vision of being the leaders and best in every way. And part of it is financial, because we are required to be financially self-supporting. We don't take any revenues from the general fund. In fact, we actually contribute to the general fund. We don't take any appropriations from the state legislature. We are in a position where we have to support ourselves through our own activities. And so the resources we need to help us be the leaders and best in every way is one of the responsibilities that we have. It's not the only, and I think some people operate under the illusion that all we worry about is the revenues and the financial side of Michigan Athletics. We are a not-for-profit auxiliary unit of the University of Michigan. There's no profit motive. It's simply a function of how do we get the resources we need to keep moving us in the direction of that aspirational vision we have for the department, which we think is consistent with everything that Michigan's about. I would hope if you talk to any dean or any leader of any unit on this campus, they would tell you they want to be leaders and best. I don't think that's different for athletics at all.
A lot of fans have expressed discontent that they see that growing the athletic department and really pushing Michigan as a brand has undermined some of the traditions. Is that a problem of communication, or what would you like to say to some of those fans?
The most difficult decisions we make are balancing the commitment and respect we have for traditions while also recognizing that the world is changing around us. And I was a student athlete here decades ago, back in the 70s, and we had one year we had an undefeated team that was ranked in the top 5 in the nation, and so it was pretty special. We were on television 3 times. It was very different then. Everything's on television now. We compete with television sets. Or do you really want to come and buy a ticket and be at the stadium? Is there anything going on that I'm not going to see on television? Or is the presentation I get on television better than the experience I'm going to have coming to the stadium? That's a new dynamic. There's generational changes that occur. The young people of today, the recruits we're bringing to campus, these 15, 16, 17-year-old recruits have a very different mindset than I did when I came here, and a very different set of priorities in terms of how they choose where they're going to go. A great example, sometimes examples are a great way to tell a story, is this whole issue of occasionally putting our team in an alternative uniform. Whenever that gets announced, there's like, the traditionalists are just upset beyond belief that our football team is going to run out of the tunnel and wear something different than they typically wear. The flip side of that is when I'm with recruits, and our coaches are with the recruits, and when we do our exit interviews of our seniors who are leading the program in football, one of the first things they talk about is the idea that occasionally they want to be able to wear alternative uniforms because they see that in the NFL, they see it in softball, they see it in basketball, they see it in baseball, they see their colleagues in other programs occasionally being able to wear these special uniforms. And so our young student athletes are highly interested in this. Our traditionalists are not at all interested in it. And we're in a position where we try to strike that balance. And sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we get it wrong. And we try to learn from when we get it wrong and make corrections to make sure that we embrace and preserve the traditions that we all hold dear. Nobody needs to explain to me the traditions of a Michigan football game. I ran out of that tunnel. I wore that winged helmet. And so I understand how important those things are, but I also understand that there will be times where we're going to need to incorporate a bit of a more modern, contemporary approach to some of the things that we do if we want to be competitive. And we'll continue to work in that.
Mm-hmm. The city of Ann Arbor has at times expressed discontent with some of the flyering and the large billboard that was put up on South Campus. What relationship would you like to have with the city of Ann Arbor and the residents here?
I want the city of Ann Arbor and the residents here to see us as an asset. I want the city of Ann Arbor to understand that when we create the largest college hockey game in the history of hockey and bring 109,000 people into town in December for a hockey game, I hope and want them to believe that all those people come into town that are filling the restaurants and partying and enjoying the atmosphere and parking in people's lawns and paying money to park, and I mean all the commerce and the economic development that comes from those activities, I'd like the city to see that as a benefit. When we bring the NHL Winter Classic here, an estimated $30 to $35 million worth of economic development came in this area, and every restaurant and every hotel and every taxi and ground service and the airport, and I mean we were generating activity that inures to the benefit of every retailer and every business fundamentally in this area. The largest soccer game in the history of the United States this summer accomplished the same purpose in a quiet weekend in the summer in August in Ann Arbor. We brought 109,000 people to celebrate a sport that we don't typically get to see, and they were people who came in and filled our hotels and filled our those are things that I think we can do that are of a benefit to the community. Now sometimes in doing those things we tie up traffic and we make noise, and there are byproducts of some of these things that we do that we try to work as best we can to mitigate. That football stadium only gets used 6 or 7 or 8 times, maybe 9 times at the most, a year in terms of big events that require traffic management, lots of noise and lots of crowds. So what we try to do is manage those situations in a way that we don't offend or impose upon residents, and that we create opportunities for the city. And that's what I hope we can create, is that kind of a partnership.
I think we're about out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to add just to finish up about the events this week, or how the athletic department will move forward?
No, other than the Michigan Athletics cannot be successful without this community embracing our work, caring about our student athletes, caring about our coaches, and supporting the work that they do. And we have 31 teams, and they're not always going to win championships. And in some cases, they're not always going to play well. And in some cases, they're going to disappoint. These are 18 to 23-year-old young people who are trying to learn and trying to get better, and they're being coached by people who devote an enormous amount of their life to that undertaking. And I see it up close and personal. I know them personally. I know their families. I see how these young people work. I see the schedules they keep. I see the devotion they have to the institution. And all I can ask, and all I hope we can do as a Michigan community, is respect them and support them and understand how hard they're working, because nobody wants to be more successful than those young student athletes. If anybody wonders whether they want to win or they're trying to win, or if anybody wonders whether coaches are highly motivated to win, then they really don't understand athletics and they don't understand athletes. And I'm just hopeful that with controversy and personality attacks and demonstrations and all this stuff aside, that we stay focused on the real purpose and mission of what we're doing. We've got young people we care about. They're doing their very best to represent this university, and we should support them.
Very well. Well, thank you for being with us today. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and indirectly the student body. So stay tuned for more coverage on michigandaily.com. Thank you again.
You're welcome.